One of the questions I'm often asked is, why do certain people always think that they need to be placed at the top of the hierarchy? Why do they need to be in charge? Why do they need to be the people who set up the hierarchy and put themselves at the top? Now, there are a couple of different perspectives on this. The first perspective is aspirational as a leader. This is the person that wants to control resources and set up their own kingdom for selfish desires. That this is the person, you go back and look at the early 1900s British Navy studies that famously happened, is that the exponential growth of middle management, people that are sitting in offices, exploded. Why? Because the more admirals, the more captains that we had in the British Navy in the early 1900s and late 1800s, those lent themselves to rampant growth in headcount because people want to visualize and see their own kingdom as a natural outliving of their pride. Now, in contrast to this vain aspiration, there's one reason why you would want to be at the top of the hierarchy if you're like me, who consider themselves an aspiring servant leader. And that reason is we have to have fast turnaround capacity in an emergency situation. So if you have a struggling organization and you're running out of cash, you're running out of resources, you have an emergency, it's incumbent on the serving leader to take control, to take charge, and make very, very fast decisions. Sometimes there's not time for committee decisions. Sometimes there's not time for research. It all comes back to instinct in that case. And that's why you want a seasoned leader who's made lots of mistakes, that has made multiple repetitions of mistakes, learning, and enablement of new strategies, because this repetition of learning is what gains the instincts to be able to take charge in a very, very important and critical situation. And as soon as the emergency is mitigated, the leader needs to back off and cede control back into the lieutenants and the people of the organization to run the organization. Hey guys, if you're a commercial real estate investor who's thinking about selling their property, I encourage you to reach out to us at cxre.co. The link's below. CXRE Commercial Real Estate is a team of professional advisors licensed in 41 states, able to help advise you through the process of buying or selling your commercial real estate in up to 41 states. Link is below, cxre.co. Let's get back to it. Being at the top of the hierarchy is not a place for a serving leader long term. Being at the top of the hierarchy is only necessary for those that need to, in an emergency situation, save an organization. You see, we have these two predicaments that we as leaders want to be at the top of the hierarchy, that want to have the top title. And of course, it's not titles that count, it's the men that make the titles, that make the positions that count. But it's also incumbent on us to take charge and to save the organization when those very few times come up. And if you find yourself in a position where there's always emergencies, there's always obstacles to overcome, and you always have to take charge of the situation, rethink your own leadership, rethink the way that you're running the organization, and have a more process-focused organization. Because if the emergencies are repeating, this tells you that you have the wrong people in place. Whenever a situation repeats itself and the processes don't work and the process changes don't work, it tells you one thing, that we have to figure out how to get the right people on the right seats on the bus. We have to figure out who's not a good fit here, who needs to maybe move into a different position, who maybe needs to exit the organization. Because the loving thing for you to do with the organization is to prevent the repetitive failure. The repetitive failure, the repetitive mistakes are those which happen week after week, month after month. And I'll tell you the important thing about emergencies. Emergencies are rarely important. The fires that come out that have to be put out are rarely important long term. And the fires are the worst thing that can happen to you, not because they are doing damage to your organization, but the fires distract you from your purpose. The fires distract you from your intentionality to be directive in orientation, to be pointed in the right direction, pointing in the same direction and move. And if we're not moving every day, we're dying. If we're staying the same place, we're retreating. And so as we look at the hierarchy in our organizations, you don't want the leader at the top. A true leader will be at the bottom, supporting the organization, sacrificing for their organization. That's why the famous Simon Sinek says that leaders eat last. He says that because it is the job of the leaders to support the hierarchy, not to be the determinant of the hierarchy. Only weak people are long-term in the top place in the hierarchy. It is true leaders who don't need the title, that don't need to have the visualization of themselves at the top, they're able to, year after year, decade after decade, lead and enable other leaders within the organization to become the people and the leaders that their families, their friends, their organizations, their churches, their mosques require of them.